It's fine if you don't know. I'm just trying to get answers here. You just say, I don't know, and then I'm going to ask you when you're going to know.
Now we have Senator Hawley. Early
Thanks.
Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Early bird gets the worm. Mr. Kumar, let me start with you. We've talked about software targeting American networks. I want to ask you about hardware in some of these systems, particularly transformers. As some of the components for transformers, of course, are produced in China, and the risk of malicious hardware implants was sufficiently high that the last administration seized some Chinese transformers back in 2020.
Senator Hawley,
Yeah.
could I interrupt you for just a second? Because we have 7 and we have to have some business that we can get done. And we'll come right back to you, okay? Now that a quorum of transacting business is present, we will recess for the hearing for a moment to approve the subcommittee assignments for the 118th Congress. A committee resolution appointing members to the subcommittees was circulated along with a notice and agenda for today's business meeting to all members last Friday. The chairs and ranking members were chosen in accordance with the rules of our respective party conferences, and member assignments reflects members' preferences. Do you wish to add anything to the subcommittee? Mr. Senator Barrasso, my friend.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to voice my support for the resolution appointing members of the subcommittees for the 118th Congress. I'd also like to congratulate Subcommittee Chairs Sanders, King, Cortez Masto, and Wyden, and Subcommittee Ranking Members Hawley, Daines, Lee, and Risch, and a note that Senator Hawley is serving as the ranking member of one of the subcommittees for the first time. I want to thank all of the members for their willingness to serve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to be heard on the subcommittee assignments?
Mr. Chairman, you went so fast, sir, I wasn't able to hear everything you said. So could you do the whole thing again? Really slow so that you could hear every word distinctly and clearly and
Sir,
think about
my
each
fellow
and every...
senator from North Dakota, I'll go backwards if you want me to.
Not necessary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If not, the question on adoption of the resolution. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The resolution is agreed to. Concludes the business meeting. We'll go now resume our hearing and back to Senator Hawley. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, there we go. Just waiting for my time to be reset. All right, Mr. Kumar, back to you. We were talking about transformers, and I was about to ask you if you know what percentage of the U.S. electric grid contains components that are manufactured in China.
You're getting that, David.
Senator Hawley, thank you for the question, and appreciate your recognition that we really need to be focused on the China threat when it comes to the grid equipment, both hardware and software that is deployed across the United States. Where we have been really focused on is 4 different areas here. One is we need to understand what are those critical components that, if disrupted, could have a debilitating impact on the United States. The second area where we're focused on is establishing provenance. So really understanding what's in this equipment, what's in the subcomponent level, and what pieces are potentially from an adversarial nation like a China. The second area third area where we're focused is testing. So we're testing some of this equipment down to the chip level and down to the software level in partnership with the DOE National Laboratories. And then finally, we're getting education and awareness out to the sector. That's where our focus of our effort is right now, and we're doing some of that analysis currently, and we're happy to brief you on some of that work.
So does that mean you don't know? You don't know what percentage of the grid contains components manufactured in China?
So, sir, there's a number of components that are built. The hard part about some of these questions is, at the top level, it could be, it looks like an American manufacturer or a friendly country.
That's what I'm asking you.
The reality is, when you go down to the subcomponent level, is where it gets a lot harder. So our focus is really looking at all of that equipment, and we're now doing that analysis right now to see what pieces of equipment have some of these concerning areas. Now,
okay, wait. So I'm sorry, my time is limited here, but I just want. So you don't. It sounds like you don't know. When do you think you might know? You say you're doing the analysis. When will it be done, and when will we find out?
Sir, we are doing a broad analysis on what are the critical components in the sector, and what do we need to be prioritizing when it comes to some of our testing. And we're taking a risk-based approach. The reality is...
when will you know? When will you know what you... so, I didn't think this would be very hard. I asked you what percentage of the grid contains components manufactured in China. You don't know, but you say you're looking at it. I just want to know when you're going to be done. When are we going to know?
So, sir, it's a complex question. As you know, the grid is it has thousands of hardware and
date.
software.
I'm looking for a date. You're exhausting my patience now. When are you going to be done with the analysis?
Sure, I think the one thing we have to remember is when you have an analysis like this, China may not just choose to exploit equipment they're developing. They may choose to exploit equipment that is developed by someone else if it has a vulnerability.
Oh my gosh,
We
I
can't
feel like I'm on
only
the Senate floor. This is like a filibuster. Okay, I'll give this to you for the record. Let me try something else. What percentage of large power transformers are manufactured in China? Do you know that?
So currently, that number is not as high. We're doing it in
Well, wait a minute. You just told me a second ago you don't have any idea what the number is. So when you say it's not as high, what are we even talking about here?
So the United States is not purchasing as many large power transformers
many?
as it was back in the day.
Back in the day, what does that even mean?
What I find is a lot of the utilities themselves recognize the China risk, and they themselves are not purchasing these large power transformers.
Well, what percentage are manufactured in China of our large power transformers? Do you know? It's fine if you don't know. I'm just trying to get answers here. You just say, I don't know, and then I'm going to ask you when you're going to know.
I'm happy to get back with you on that answer, sir.
Okay. Okay, I find this really quite baffling. This leads me to ask why it is that this administration suspended the last administration's executive order that restricted the procurement of foreign electric equipment. That was Executive Order 13920. Why did they? I mean, why allow procurement of foreign electric equipment that can be so dangerous to the grid? Do you know why this happened?
So, sir, right now what the focus is, we have to take a holistic view of supply chain security. Just having an approved and unapproved list is not the only way to secure our supply chains.
Well, that may be true. I'm just wondering that why would we allow China, a country that's suspected of numerous cyber attacks against us, supply major components for our electrical grid? I mean, is that a smart thing to do?
So, again, what we're taking is a more strategic approach to this, to look at all of those different pieces I just mentioned, to ensure we look at security from all different aspects, including security by design, is a key component of how we need to tackle this problem. It's too large of a problem to start to have one solution, which was the solution in that executive order. Now, that executive order is under review. I defer to the White House in terms of a replacement executive order, but know that this is an area that's a priority for us at the department to ensure that supply chain is secure, and we're doing that very actively.
Well, all right, my time's expired, and there's lots of my colleagues who want to ask questions. I'm going to give these questions to you again for the record. I'd like to know what percentage of the grid contains components manufactured in China. And if you don't know, that's fine. I'd like to know when you're going to have your analysis done. I'd like to know what percentage of large power transformers are manufactured in China. And I just humbly submit to you that allowing China, getting procurement of electric equipment made in China and allowing it to be integrated into our grid is a bad idea. And I'm baffled as to why this administration is allowing it to go forward. I'll probably have some more questions for you for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And Mr. Kumar, I think it's fair to say that we would all like to see what our dependency is on China's supply chain, because we're trying to break that immediately, if not quicker. Thank you. With that, we have now Senator Hickenlooper.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Ranking Member. Thank all of you for taking the time and being with us. Let me start with Mr. Lee. And I was intrigued by your suggestion of how we could help infrastructure asset owners and operators. You suggested that the U.S. government might clarify cyber roles and responsibilities in the energy sector, identify requirements, and identify realistic threat scenarios. To what degree is some of that already happening, and what needs to be able to occur to accelerate that and actually realize the goal?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. There's a lot of collaboration that happens, but the short answer is a lot of times the requirements are be cyber secure against cyber risks, and that's just not actionable to anybody. So it'd be much more effective if the government clarified what does it want out of a pipeline, or what does it want an electric grid operator to do, and against what scenarios. Are we concerned with a Chinese-based threat scenario that we've seen before? Let's clarify that and have them focus on that. And most importantly, I think it's important for the government to advise on why they care, what they want the outcome to be, but not tell the asset owners how to do it. There's so much expertise at these electric companies, they'll figure out the how. Just clarify why we're doing it and what you want.
Great, I appreciate that. Mr. Zwick, in your testimony, you talked about the need for non-prescriptive regulation that allows for customized solutions. Actually, you've all said that to a certain extent. You also described how the difficulty operating in different states with different regulations. About almost 10 years ago, I helped put together the National Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs, which specifically tries to discuss that and address that and look at that. Have you got any thoughts on how we can harmonize regulations, including between state and federal levels, without making them overly prescriptive?
Actually, I've talked to my friend Push at the end a few times about this, on how we can.
He's next. He's next.
Okay, so baselines that we can get out to the states to have them design their requirements around those, so we're all hitting the same target across all the states and at the federal level will help us a lot, because that is a concern we have. If we have to hit various targets, whether it's reporting requirements or security requirements, that puts a lot of extra load on us, determining what the actual request is, as well as implementing it and designing it.
Right. And I guess I would just throw out there, I think it's important to make sure we get the right people at the table as we establish what those levels are and
Yep.
make sure that we have buy-in up and down the food chain.
Absolutely, I very much agree, sir.
Great. Mr. Kumar, we're hearing about the need for timely communication, the need for trust between energy companies, their suppliers, DOE. Since the government regulates so much of the energy space, sometimes it appears industry may be reluctant to share its problems for fear of drawing the attention of regulators and the federal government to possible shortcomings. And I think the government has to be careful about how and if it shares threat information, which obviously is often sensitive, but reflects back on those private operators. Cybersecurity only works when everyone is talking. I don't think there's any substitute for that. How can we break down these barriers to effective communication, and how will the ETAC play a pivotal role?
Senator, thank you for that question, and I couldn't agree more with you. The cybersecurity community is built on trust. It's trusted relationships that allow information sharing. So in our role at the Department of Energy, we are the sector risk management agency for the energy sector, sir, where we leave the regulations to our colleagues at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We let them do the regulations. We focus on building that trusted partnership with colleagues at the utilities, but also cyber technology companies and manufacturers. And what we have found is they are willing to share with us. They want to tell us when they have a cyber incident. They want to make sure that it gets cascaded across the sector and that we have a collective defense posture. And that collective defense posture is where the ETAC is really focused on. That is the place where we want to bring together the community to look at threats. For such a long time, everyone's been looking at threats in their own individual companies. We look at it on the government side. How do we look at it together so that we can determine what is the true risk to our national security and then implement defensive measures and get information out to the entire sector?
Right, I got that. And I agree completely. I couldn't be more supportive of that. And you're currently working with independent contractors on a pilot for ETAC. Where are you on that feasibility?
Sir, yes. So we are conducting pilot activities, both here in the DC area, but also out in Denver, Colorado. Working with both the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, but also industry and other interagency colleagues. We have a critical mass there, so we're leveraging some of our pilot activities there. And the feasibility study that we're currently conducting will tell us, where does this ETAC need to live? How large does it need to be? Who needs to be in it? How do we make sure it can include all parts of the sector? And that feasibility study is due to be done this summer, sir.
Oh, great. That's terrific. Well, anyway, keep up the good work, all of you. I appreciate it's an excellent panel, I say, to the leadership. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator. Now we're anxiously waiting to hear from Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to both you and the ranking member for holding a hearing today, and appreciate the witnesses being here. I worked with Senator Rosen, who was here earlier, and we passed the Cyber Sense program, and essentially it was to help test products and technologies intended for use in bulk power system for any cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And so could you give me an update on your implementation of the Cyber Sense Act and both in terms of what you're doing and if you're finding that it's helpful and effective?
Senator, thank you for that question, and thank you for the support of the work the department has been doing on cyber testing through the Energy Cyber Sense Act. That act allows us to bring the community together. When I say the community, it's not just DOE and the labs. It is the utilities who are installing the equipment, it's the manufacturers who are building the equipment. And then we're also thinking about standards organizations to build in security into some of the standards that are used to design the grid of the future. So where we are right now is we have 4 global manufacturers who are part of the program. The first one is Schneider, Schweitzer, and Hitachi Energy. And then a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, in fact, we signed on GE Gas Power to partner with us. These are all willing partners to ensure that security is built in through testing. And to that end, we've already had a number of vulnerabilities tested or found through the testing program, and we've disclosed those vulnerabilities, certainly to the manufacturers so they can patch their systems and get the fixes out, but we also publicly disclose them so the community can actually benefit from this testing.
Right. I mean, the whole idea, of course, is to find these things, but then to inform others so that they can avoid, some of the cyber problems that you do find. So I think that's a very important part of it. Talk about some of the other steps you're taking, and particularly in regard to, we're so integrated in so many ways. If you have a cyber issue in one place, how do you prevent conflagration, having that spread through the system? Because things move so rapidly, the technology is changing so rapidly. How do you create firewalls or, breaks in the system so that it just doesn't flash through the system in a way where, you not only have bigger problems, but it's really hard to track it down and root it out.
Absolutely, Senator. So this is where we need to be thinking about, certainly we talk a lot about security by design, but in some way in the energy sector, we have to think about resilience by design. We have to think, how can we limit a potential impact of a cyber attack? How do we limit it from actually causing a larger disruption? We think back on the SolarWinds attack. One manufacturer that was exploited, or one software supplier was exploited, and it caused global impacts to companies using SolarWinds. We need to be thinking about how this is a key target for some cyber actors, and how do we ensure that we can not only protect those systems, but also ensure that it doesn't cause a cascading impact. This is where some of our research and development comes into play, where we can limit some of these cyber attacks and actually be able to contain them before they cause some of these impacts. So that is a key focus for us in our R&D program in CSER.
Yeah, that's the term that you said it much better, the cascading impacts. That's exactly what, it seems to me you really do have to be very aggressive in that regard so that you don't have something, it's one thing to have an isolated, and that attack or problem, that's bad enough, but the cascading effect obviously could get out of control in a hurry. Seems to me that's got to be a real area of right now, how are you doing? How are we doing? I mean, in terms of some of our adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, so on and so forth, how are we doing on staying on top of this cyber issue? I mean, do we really know what's going on? Do you really feel confident that we know what the risks are out there and we're getting to them? You don't bat 1,000, but that we're on top of this.
So, sir, this is an evolving risk landscape, and particularly in the cyber domain, it's a rapidly evolving cyber risk landscape. And so we absolutely have to stay on top of this. We are certainly doing that through some of the R&D that we're doing with the national laboratories. They're leading the charge on some of this. Our private sector partners are also innovating quickly. Now, we do still have some gaps, and this is where the Energy Threat Analysis Center pilot is going to help us. We are all seeing our own cyber threats in our own spaces, but we're not connecting the dots. We're not seeing, if this is happening out west, is it also happening out east? How do we connect those dots with what we learn from private sector networks and cyber technology companies with the intelligence community? That's where we need to go in the future if we're truly going to get on top of this threat.
Last question real quick. Are you able to get the people that you need, the sharp people with the kind of training you need to really get after this?
Senator, I really appreciate that question. When I started in CSER, we had a whopping 20 federal employees for the entire cybersecurity, energy security mission of all hazards. Since then, we've doubled our team, and then thanks to Congress and passing the budget in December, we are now able to even double that size. And our focus is to hire cyber talent, engineering talent, and we're implementing cyber retention incentives to attract that talent to the government so that we can actually execute these important programs.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And now we have Senator Rono.
What, no adjective for me? I feel
You're
hurt.
just solid. That's all I can say is you're solid, Senator.
Okay, I'll take that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For Mr. Kumar,
You're early.
we have heard from Mr. Swick, of AEP, representing one of the largest electric utilities in the country. In past hearings under Chair Murkowski, we heard from similar or smaller utilities that struggle to find the resources to secure their systems from cyber attacks. As part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, this committee established a $250 million grant and technical assistance program. It's called the Rural and Municipal Utility Advances Cybersecurity Growth and Technical Assistance Program. It's a mouthful. To help improve the cyber capabilities of smaller utilities and rural electric cooperatives, such as the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative in Hawaii. Can you update us on DOE's implementation of this program?
Senator, thank you for that question, and this is a really important area, is we need to really be focused on some of those under-resourced communities. We need to be thinking about the municipal utilities, the rural cooperatives. There are over 2,700 of them across the United States, so we need to prioritize their
Yes,
efforts.
that's why we have this program. How's it going?
Where we are right now with the program is, what we've been spending is we've conducted listening sessions with the companies themselves. So we had listening sessions with over 250 municipal rural cooperative utilities with cyber technology companies to really understand where do we need to focus those resources so we can have an impact. And so we are in the process, after those listening sessions that we convened with all of these different stakeholders, we're now in the process of starting to execute some of that funding and get it out the door to the communities.
So can you give me an example of what some of these smaller utilities and rural entities need in the area of cyber protection?
So one of the things that we found through some of the listening sessions is, in some cases, it might just be cyber hygiene. In other cases, they may not have the resources to hire cyber talent, and so they might need to bring in third parties who can come in and execute some of the cybersecurity measures for them. And so we need to meet them where they are to ensure that we can actually have a sustainable program, because we want to ensure that it's not going to be a thing where they have funding for a couple of years and then they don't have funding after that. It has to be sustainable.
Yes.
So that's been our focus, is to make sure it's a sustainable program beyond the life of the funding that we have.
So in these listening sessions that you had, was the Kauai Utility one of those entities that you heard from?
Senator, I'm not sure
I can
right
check
now, but
with
I'm
them,
happy to come
but
back with
you're
you.
available to help them, right? Because
Absolutely, ma'am.
they're the only utility co-op in Hawaii. We're going to need a highly trained, again for you, Mr. Kumar, a trained workforce to help defend the critical infrastructure against these kinds of attacks. And we have CSER. What is CSER doing to improve post-secondary educational cybersecurity training curricula?
Senator, workforce is a key element. As I mentioned earlier, we have 700,000 unfilled jobs. And then when you actually take a look at what those jobs that know energy systems, that's an even smaller pool. So to that end, we are focused in 3 areas. One is the future workforce, and that's focused on the post-secondary workforce. So we have a competition where we bring together colleges, universities, technical colleges all together to defend energy systems in a mock cyber scenario. And the idea is we also we bring in private sector so that they can look at jobs in the private sector, jobs at the national laboratories, and of course, jobs with us in CSER. We're training them to understand the cyber threats and make it real, where it's not just cyber is a thing that happens in an IT environment, it actually has operational impact to the availability of electricity, oil, and natural gas. And so we're training them through the competition.
That sounds good. Has your office considered supporting students with fellowship opportunities, for example, in government or in the government or energy sector, so that they can get some hands-on experience and create a commitment and interest in working with within the government sector?
Senator, as music to my ears, we are actually actively looking at fellowships to bring in fellows into the Department of Energy to help us accomplish our mission.
You should please let us know, because I'm a big supporter of internships and fellowship programs to really give people the experience within government and the kinds of jobs, et cetera, and what they can do as part of our effort. We're all in this together, so to build that esprit de corps, I think that's a good thing. Okay, I would like to ask one of the other, I am out of time.
Go ahead.
Okay. For Mr. Swick, Investing in modern electrical grid will play a key role in ensuring reliable power, higher levels of renewable power, and lower energy bills. And you may know that Hawaii pays the highest electric bills. I think we still pay the highest in the country. So in addition, microgrids with local energy and energy storage systems offer the potential to ensure hospitals, fire stations, and military installations can quickly recover from natural disasters or cyber attacks on the larger grid. What should regulators, owners, and operators of assets in the power sector do to take advantage of the benefits and reduce the risks that come as local power systems incorporate larger shares of distributed renewable power sources and energy storage?
So a big piece of that is making sure we manage the risk that those could introduce. As we have all the distributed resources to get connected, we need to make sure the right guidelines exist for them so they don't introduce risk while they're managing the risk. Their whole intent is to help
Yes.
manage that risk, but we need to make sure we're not introducing more as it's being implemented. So controlling those as well as partnering with the local areas and making sure we figure out what they need. And AEP's doing a lot in those areas to help create microgrids and other distributed areas where we can work with partners to enable that to be provided.
So do you think that the utilities are doing a good job to make sure that they're not introducing risk into their systems?
I think the utilities are doing a good job helping manage that and ensure it. Some of the distributed providers that may not have the same level of capabilities or focus, and they may not be looking at security first to market, those are some areas where I think we need to continue to focus and help manage that risk, because it's things that I may not be able to control because I can only reach so far into it, right? So we need them to step up and bring secure stuff to connect.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.